Well, something that's kind of really begun to stick out for me over the past couple of months, I'd say, is the crucial role of curriculum. Let me kind of explain this a little bit. So over the past few years, I've been getting deeper and deeper into the value and the importance of kind of the cognitive load theory and ideas like that. And the more I learn about cognitive load theory as an example and lesson design more broadly, the more I realize how much can actually go into designing a really effective explication or lesson. And so I often go to schools and I will like deliver some PD on cognitive load theory at a conference or something like that. And then I go away myself and I'll think, I've just kind of hopefully empowered these teachers with some knowledge, but I've also put a great burden upon them, right? Because they now know all these ideas of redundancy effect, the split attention effect, transinformation effect, and so on, that they're now expected to kind of apply to their lessons. And lesson planning already takes up an enormous amount of time for teachers. And then you kind of add on these refinements and it's like, well, how much time is that going to take? How unrealistic of a task is that? And I find it myself, now, like, as I'm preparing my own lessons, I'm thinking, wow, like there's these issues with this lesson, or I want to do all these things. I've got all these ideas how to make it better, but, there's only so much time and I've got to, to prepare it within. So it's kind of opened my eyes to the value of having much more centralized lesson planning within a school. And there's a few examples I'm kind of keen to talk about in terms of this. One is from my personal experience from like last year. So last year, the Year 12 class that I was contributing to and kind of facilitating the running of the team, we took a big step and we actually brought something. Here's something I prepared earlier.
Okay,
not
nice.
Not a very pretty cover, but it's basically our further maths bound reference, and it's pretty thick, as you can see, and it's basically a book that details like how to do pretty much every question that they're likely to come across. And so it enabled us as a team to kind of have a really structured and consistent approach. And that meant that, if students are helping each other outside of class and they're across classes, they're actually talking the same language. And it also meant that if they forgot how to do something, if they missed a class and so on, it was all there in their bound reference. And we actually got phenomenal results, the best results we've ever had with that subject. And as a subject that really stood out within the school as well and really raised our results. So that was a personal experience. Also, Greg Ashman's school, I've kind of seen some of their curriculum resources recently, Ballarat Clarendon College. They're like the highest achieving Year 12 results in Victoria, the state that I'm in. And they have completely centralized lesson plans in mathematics. And then I spoke, the most recent ERRR podcast that I brought out was with Ben Jensen on the importance of curriculum. And he sketched some pictures of Finland, Portugal, Estonia, and France over the last couple of decades. And, Finland and France, who are traditionally super strong in their performance, have really slid down the tables in terms of PISA. And Portugal and Estonia have actually kind of moved up and shown a lot of growth. And essentially the opposite plan has happened in both scenarios. So Finland and France have both moved from a highly specified curriculum that's focused on being knowledge rich to much more of a skill-based and kind of laissez-faire curriculum. And conversely, Portugal and Estonia have moved from less structure to a really, really highly specified knowledge-rich curriculum that's national and standardized. And so we've kind of seen national examples as well. So from my personal experience and also things I've learned about what's happening on the international stage, I've just become more and more convinced about the value and even more so the importance of kind of centralized planning, highly specified content that can then be incrementally improved upon with teams and schools.
Love it. All right. So a few things on this. So the first is just going back to what you said right at the start there about when you do PD and the burden being on the people to then go back and change it and so on. This probably won't be the first time either this conversation or in this series that we do where we reference Dylan William, because for everything he's got a great quote or a great idea on. The thing he always says is whenever you're suggesting a change to teachers, the question to always ask is, what are you going to stop doing to make this change? Because again, we've got finite time, finite attention, workload issues, and so on and so forth. And that's always what I try and build into my PD. So the first thing I say is, look, there's a load of ideas here. The worst thing you could do is try and change everything all at once, because it'll be too much for you, too much for your kids. So pick the one thing that you want to work on first, and also, what are you going to stop doing to free up time, free up attention to take this on? So I think that's an important point. So I love that one. Second thing, Greg Ashman. So this feels bizarre what I'm about to say now, but it was only when I interviewed Greg Ashman for the first time, which I think was in 2017, and he pitched the idea of central lesson plans to me back then, and I thought he'd lost his mind. I thought, like, why the hell would you do that? Because the whole thing about being a teacher is you've got to be creative, you've got to come up with your own ideas and so on. And I spent the first 10, 12 years of my career designing my own lessons. Very rarely would I use, certainly not a whole lesson somebody had produced, maybe the odd thing here or there. But it felt like that's one of the things that being a teacher is, creating your lesson plans from scratch. And whenever he spoke about, and we had a big kind of bit of an argument about it, and he said, look, if you've got something that's been designed by an experienced, skilled teacher, been refined over the years, why wouldn't you want your less experienced teachers to use it? I was like, all right, it was a bit of a watershed moment for me thinking about this, but it's really interesting. And this is my final 2 points, then I'll shut up about this all. When I go into schools and I work with maths departments, as I do a lot, I see two different things. So let's put it this way, two different things. So I see departments who the teachers do essentially whatever they want. They've got a scheme of work, but the scheme of work is just a few bullet points. And it's like you've 2 weeks to teach fractions, and in those 2 weeks, cover adding and subtracting, multiplying, dividing, and so on. But just do whatever you want. And sometimes it works, but the vast majority of the time it doesn't work. I think you need an incredibly strong department to pull that off, because what you're banking on is that teachers will be able to use their skills, their expertise with their own individual kind of styles to pull together the best way of doing things. And it feels, and I can only speak from my experience, you get a bit of a lesson lottery there, where in room 13, something fantastic's happening. In room 14, not quite so good. But whenever I say it might be a good idea to start centralizing some of these, the thing that always comes back is teacher autonomy. No, I want my teachers to have complete freedom and so on. And yeah, 5 years ago, I'd have said I'm all with you, but now I'm certainly not so sure. And the final thing I'll say is there's a lethal mutation of this all, and I don't know if you've come across this in Australia, but you see this all the time in the UK, right? And that is where maths departments have bought into some package. So we have White Rose is a good one here. We have White Rose Maths, which is for years 7, 8, and 9, and 10 and 11 as well. They have PowerPoints for every lesson, assessments. The resources are brilliant, right? But what you get is that departments buy these packages in, and then I've seen this, I saw this last week actually, you'll get a teacher delivering a lesson from this PowerPoint, and the teacher is just clicking through and things are appearing. And I saw one head of maths doing it. He was clicking through. He was surprised by what was appearing on the board. He was like, where the hell has that come from? And the kids were like, what's going on? And this is your classic kind of revealing the maths, just click, 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 and these things are appearing. And I think that's a potential lethal mutation from this. I don't think it'll happen when you've got a booklet like yours, but you can imagine you've got everything so planned out that the teacher thinks they can just turn up, press a button, and magic will happen. So there's a few reflections of that. I don't know if you've anything to kind of come back on any of that.
I will, but I'm going to save it till later on in the podcast, Craig, because things are going to get really juicy.
Oh, God, look at you. You're good at that, all. Good teaser there.